Welcome back. In this video, I'll talk about some major issues that I've found and experienced with the ONVO L60 by NIO, so the sub-brand, but in this video I'll also explain why I think it still comes out on top over its competitor, its main benchmark, the Model Y. So let me explain. First, a little bit of a recap. Last year I was very cautious and conservative with my estimates and expectations towards ONVO. If you remember, I said countless times on the channel that I think there will be some issues with scaling up quickly. I also said that it might not help NIO's stock price in the beginning, and for 2024 in my business case I actually had quite conservative estimations of only 15,000 units sold. Well, luckily we got way ahead of that, or well, a tiny markup on that. I'm happy that we met the December key milestone of 10K deliveries. So that's really helpful, especially for trust by investors, and that the management guided towards that and fulfilled it. I think that's really positive and bullish. And with that, we also got more than 20K deliveries in 2024. So that's above my personal expectations, but still maybe lower than some of you people have expected in the first place. But I think it also confirmed that the launch wasn't really smooth, and that was actually confirmed during my first visits for the ONVO stores in China. So after my videos about the store visits for ONVO, I had the opportunity to ride the car in the back seat. So I was picked up to a NIO event in an L60. I was riding through Guangzhou skyline during the night, and I must say, the soft ambient light inside, the sound insulation, the sound system, the panoramic roof, all of that really added a nice feeling. The exterior, aggressive, modern, chic. It does look even better in person than in the photos, I would say. So all in all, this was a really nice experience. And the next day I joined a NIO organized test drive. This time an Italian car influencer was at the wheel. I was just sitting in the back seat again. But again, I noticed it's smooth ride, how spacious it is, how comfortable it is. The reclining back seat was also a really nice surprise, something that you wouldn't find in a Model Y. But here's where the things got interesting, the bad parts. First, one thing missing is surely the massage function in the back row. Obviously, this is by design. So the front row got massage seats. You don't find that function on the Model Y. And I can tell you, Chinese auto massage seats are next level. You really feel it. Great punch. I absolutely love it. But backseat massages are reserved for NIO apparently. So you can't make the ONVO back seats too good, right? It's already enough with the space that you got. But the really problematic part was about ONVO's Autopilot. Generally, the navigation part seems to have had an issue. I just think that our positioning on the map was slightly lacking. So the GPS or Beidou, the Chinese satellite system, seemed to have not been calibrated correctly, at least in our car. This would explain why sometimes we'd miss a road exit, and obviously the Autopilot also sometimes was confused and we had interceptions and needed to take over the wheel. The NIO guys told us that ONVO already runs a different Autopilot software build than the NIO cars, so it's not having a LiDAR, of course, and it's relying on end-to-end processing, meaning the car does override real-world perceptions of what it sees to any assisting driving input that it might have, such as relying on maps or signal. So it's basically a vision-only approach, similar to Tesla's FSD in the US, but in our cars, this resulted in problems. Now, while this was truly a bit disappointing to see, we did not get a good explanation from NIO employees on site, to be honest. So I can only chime in with my personal explanation to this, which must have been a problem with the early built car and software, and that they simply didn't check, and they gave us a lemon in this regard. So I met a Chinese NIO influencer, which you may know, Dong Mai Mai. We spoke during NIO Day, and he tested all sorts of NIO autonomous driving software builds, even developer versions that are not accessible to the broader user base. And he also had experience with ONVO cars and this type of software stack. And he told me that he didn't encounter the problems that I told him we had. So this means, first, some ONVO cars still might have minor issues with either software and hardware calibration. And second, unfortunately, we got them for our media test drive. Imagine that. And so to me, this rather translates into a problem with the operational side of NIO, not so much with the car itself, because it's, first of all, totally normal that some of the first batches may have, some minor issues. And of course, this issue doesn't seem to be huge because it's entirely solvable through a software update. And I would say that this is not even a real issue to begin with. So compared to the Tesla Model Y, which ONVO is competing against, the Model Y can't even do such basic autopilot functions in China that ONVO can already do today. Even some of that has lacked in the test. However, if NIO would have their quality check and operationals in check, then it would, of course, be much better and, puts it way ahead of the Model Y in this regard. So this leads me to think that in combination with my first findings in the store and additionally with the media test drive, we don't have a problem with the car. It's actually very good, advanced, and should be a no-brainer buy compared to Model Y. However, we do have a problem with NIO operations. So just another tiny incident that was happening during the test drive is that they drove us to a Generation 3 swap station, which was partly blocked by a nearby construction site. Not only did this leave a not so well experience and impression to all of the journalists that were sitting in the car and test driving, but also I don't understand why they didn't at least check the site before going there. Hell, why didn't they even pick a Generation 4 swap station instead in the first place, which was definitely available a couple of kilometers around. So, you always want to show off your latest tech and not an old generation swap station, and definitely not one that's blocked by a construction site. So my verdict here is that we do have an outstanding product, which despite such initial flaws is actually very good or better than the competition in many ways. However, we don't have the excellence on the operational side here, and that's obviously making it a harder sell. Still, after those experiences, I'm personally lifting my personal expectations for ONVO sales in 2025, and I expect that once operations are getting better, they will also get better at delivering. And most importantly, why I'm lifting my personal expectations is that I think there is actually less cannibalization with NIO than I initially anticipated. So that was one reason why I was quite conservative on it, but I have to say the car feels more young, more pragmatic, and even more sporty. But more from the looks, not from the actual driving, because actually it's a bit more relaxed, laid back, and not as heavy powered, and acceleration is not as fast as the NIO cars. So it's, for somebody who's more conservative on the driving part and not as much of a car maniac, possibly. It's also not as elegant as the NIO cars. And yeah, stuff like the massage functions in the back seats, those really intended designs makes it stand out and be different to the NIO brand in some ways, which I think makes sense. So overall, I think it should really cater more to this pragmatic, price-sensitive target group. And so the positioning, I think, is there. The difference between the NIO brand and ONVO has become more clear to me now after, not only seeing, but also riding the car. And so the main problem here is, do we get those USPs across? On the operational side, that will be the challenge going further, but I do trust NIO to solve these issues. They've got a good product on hand. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Do you think they will be able to sell well in 2025? Thanks for watching.